Hello, welcome back to another episode of Soul Sessions, a Jungian coaching podcast. I'm Deborah Burnt Maldonado.
And I'm Dr. Rob.
And we're here today to continue our series on the anima and animus. The last episode, we talked about the anima, and today we're talking about the animus, the masculine principle in the psyche. And before we begin, I do want to remind you to subscribe to our podcast if you haven't already on iTunes, Spotify, or any podcast services. And make sure you get every episode, and we'd love to have you come back every week. So let's talk about the animus.
The animus. So just like the anima, the soul is love and nurturance and the feminine energy. The animus is the logos, the logic, the power, if you will, not force, but power in the sense of personal power, spiritual power. And they go together, right? If we talk about them separately, it feels like they're independent of each other, but they're very much one and the same in the sense that they define each other by their through their opposing or contradictory elements. They define each other so that love is not understood unless you understand power. And power cannot be understood correctly and wielded correctly unless it's tempered and understood as through love as well. So love and power, anima and animus, logos and eros go together, just as a man and a woman, or
two sides of the battery, the
two sides of the same coin. Exactly. These opposing but complementary and ultimately harmonizing elements go together.
And the yin and yang, if you see that, the symbol, you see that there's a little bit of the black in the white and a little bit of white in the black. And it's that counterbalance that makes the world spin and makes us survive. So we can't live without love, and we can't live without power. And we have to learn to find a conscious way to deal with these forces.
Yeah, and last time we talked about how these are archetypes that exist in all of us in the collective unconscious. Now, the collective unconscious, just to remind ourselves, it's not the same as the personal unconscious. So most of us are familiar with the personal unconscious through Freudian work or idea, the idea that Freud...
Some people call it the subconscious.
Brought forth. The personal unconscious is simply the things that we've experienced in our lives, the things we've repressed, forgotten, pushed away, denied about ourselves, et cetera, et cetera. But it's very tied to the personal. So it's therefore personal, the personal unconscious. The collective, we can see it as a reservoir that all humanity and all of nature has contributed to, and that we still have access to. That was
kind of like the major database, kind of like the internet where we're all connected. Even though we're not logged in on our computer, we can have our desktop, which is our personal files with a password, but then we can go online and have access to unlimited information. So it's interesting how that mirrors the psyche.
That's
the technology.
Right. Yep. Everything we create essentially mirrors the way the psyche works and the way the psyche is structured. Absolutely.
So when we think of animus, the inner masculine principle, we want to not think of it as just men or women. We want to think of it as just the pure masculine, meaning the will, the logic, rationalization, intellect, even authority and power, almost like a force of movement that moves us, that thing that we can't see, but we know we have that motivation and desire, like something that's moving things forward.
That's right. So at the personal level, let's begin there, because that's how we kind of presented the anima, the feminine principle. This animus, this power principle, at the personal level begins with this external authority being projected. Just like we project our love with the anima. In the animas, we project our power externally, and we think someone else has the power, not me.
Or someone else has the power, but also they're like saviors as well. That we, and not only people, but we project our power into money, into status, into having certain letters after your name, PhD, or where you live, what kind of car you drive. That like I can have power if I have a title, if I have the corner office, if I have a certain amount of money in the bank. Or if I have a best-selling book or any accomplishment, we project that there's power in those things. And then they become a source of something we chase because we think the power is in those things. And I will be powerful when I have those things.
That's right.
Or I have that relationship, or I have that person submit to me and do what I say, then I'm empowered.
In relationships, of course, many of us see power initially in the father, in mentors, in teachers, male teachers or female teachers as well, right? We see that power, that authority. And therefore, as we become adults, we're conditioned to project this idea of power onto others. That others have the authority, hold the power, and we should follow them. So,
just like you go into work and the boss drives you crazy and you wish you could just yell back at them. You can't, because they have the power to take away your paycheck or power to fire you. And then that's where you feel stuck or trapped.
Yeah. So just as with love, it's about finding it within us. Now the task in working with the animus is to find that power within us and to integrate it into our own consciousness.
And why we don't have that power within us, because we are conditioned from early in life to have it. It appears as though the power is outside of us. We're helpless little babies. We have to wait for our parent to come change us, to feed us, to drive us places when we're young and little, and make sure we have a warm bed to sleep in at night, and take us to school and but we didn't have money, the power of money to buy anything we wanted. We had to ask the parent for permission. So early in life, we were conditioned to think power is outside of us.
Absolutely.
And we didn't have our own will. We had to follow the orders of society and of our family and the culture to fit in and to survive.
Yeah. And so that requires, of course, some inner work. This active integration of the power within you. First of all, you have to find it. You have to recognize it within you, which, just like in love, it's about withdrawing the projection.
Yeah.
The first step is to understand that whatever power I see, it's my mind projecting it onto the screen of others or the world, and I'm giving it away. I'm saying they hold the power, not me, but it's my power.
And the thing is, you might argue, well, my boss has power. You don't understand. I need my job. So how can you say that I have any power? But if you truly were connected to your power, you would not be in a position that would reflect powerlessness. So what that situation is saying is that on some level you believe you don't have power. So that's the evidence that shows up out there. We're trained to think the external is giving us feedback to tell us how to react to life, versus it's giving us feedback to how we perceive ourselves in the life and how we've learned to perceive ourselves. And so that's that reclaiming the projection is actually getting curious about, why is this situation showing up for me in the first place? Why am I giving my power to my mother-in-law or to my husband or to my, my clients or, someone who filed a lawsuit against me? That people get that powerlessness feeling because some external force is coming in. And it's like, oh, when you realize that you're seeing a reflection of what you really feel, that's when you could begin to make those changes.
Yeah. That initial recognition and acknowledgement that we're projecting our power or giving it away in a sense, right? By projecting it, then leads us to that question: why am I doing this? And the answer is, in general, it's simple: that we've been conditioned from our past experiences, or through our past experiences, to do that. To see the authority, the power outside of us and not within us. So the next step is to move towards the fear of what would happen if I took that power, if I had that power, or if I expressed that power. What would be the worst thing that would happen? And the emotions that come up, right? The feeling of dread or fear, or maybe even of joy, right? That, oh my God,
I'd
I
rule the
would feel,
world.
yeah. Whatever those emotions are, now we don't want to push them away or buy into them automatically. What we want to do is examine them, because they hold the key to that answer. Why are we doing it? It's in the emotion. The emotions, we can say, are the way our mind is conditioned. So it imprints as, this is the meaning of why you should not have that power, or why you should have that power if you want it, right? But you want to examine it, because in examination of those emotions, and what we mean by examination is not just a logical observation of emotion, but a real confrontation with them, a real understanding of what is that fear about, and if it's fear, what can I do to resolve that complex that's in the psyche? What that does, then it allows us to integrate that power.
Because what those emotions are doing is actually suppressing our power and distracting us from our power. And so that's why we need to face them, and not just put light around it and push it away and send it off into like some mystical place. We need to be with that discomfort. Most of us have a uncomfortable relationship with power. And so that's why we need to integrate that emotion.
And a lot of it, of course, goes back to the father, because he, just like the mother was the initial relationship of love and nurturance, the father was often our experience with authority. And
also too, like I've heard people talk about the competition with the parent, like if you're being successful and you don't want to be out-succeed your parent, that could also be a power play as well. Like you don't want to almost like take the power away from that parent that always had the power. It's like something terrible is going to happen if I secede him. And
very Shakespearean.
and usurp him. I guess that would be the way to think about it. And there's some like danger to that.
Yeah.
And we love our parents, so we also want to obey them, and we want to kind of do what's right for them. And sometimes that conflicts with what's best for us.
So that's at the personal level. And of course, there's a lot more to that kind of work at the personal level. But at the collective level, the Animus plays a really important role as a cultural influencer, and as well as leadership. We can say, or we can see clearly, that real leaders, change the culture, right? They help us move into new ways of doing culture, new ways of being in a society, or being together in society.
So it's almost like a movement, like when you're caught up in a movement, that there's some kind of energy and that desire to make a change. People that protest, or people that have something they're passionate about, and they are out there and they're moving toward and creating that movement, or even like a movement toward personal growth and excitement about change. Not all negative, but then there's some movements that are dark and that lack love, as we talked about last time. And so that kind of looking at that authority and that how we're using that power.
Yeah. So it's not only personal, it's also collective, and it's the carrier of these collective ideas, philosophies, and social structures.
And so with leadership, in Jung's time, there weren't many women leaders, very, very few. So for women, it's almost like we have to cultivate that animus within us to make those, move toward that change. Like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she was that force that had that she had an animus, a connection in some way to help her make that movement toward equality for women.
Absolutely. Everyone has the an animus, right? It's simply, are they expressing it? Are they connected to it? Are they integrated in that sense?
So what's power versus force in leadership?
Yeah, so power, a lot of people, many of us, right, when we hear the word power, we think of force, but it doesn't necessarily mean force. And here is where the balancing power of love comes into play, right? That if we really are powerful individuals, we also love, we also want to care and protect others. It's not about controlling others. That's not power.
Or forcing others
insecurity.
To follow us.
Yeah. Those are insecurities. Those are inner complexes. Real power comes with a measure of love and care for those you're responsible for and that you're taking care of. So that's real power, and that's how it comes into balance, or the balance comes into play, right, between love and power. That you need both in equal measure in order to be a good leader, in order to be a whole person.
When I was in the corporate world, a lot of women took on that patriarchal animus, which is that animus that was like almost distorted power, where they felt like they couldn't be emotional, they couldn't be caring because it would take away their authority. And so there, like you said, you need both. And so they ended up taking on this patriarchal model of power and like almost like acting like the ego men around them versus connecting to their own power, like almost like mimicking a persona, not really connecting to power. And that's really where we feel that imbalance. And I know a lot of women that had female bosses, and they're just like, what is wrong with this woman? She's so hard and she's so harsh and cold. And it's not that they're doing that consciously. It's because they're not connected to their animus in a more meaningful way. And they're trying to use power as a control mechanism and shutting out that love or the anima in her, which is all the love and creativity and the nurturing and caring for others. So it is, it's really about balance.
So
And also male leaders as well need to connect to this as well, not just female.
Yeah, so it says a balanced animus does not seek control for its own sake, but wields influence through insight, integrity, and the ability to inspire.
I like that.
There we see the balance, right, of love and power, that it's not about control, it's not about force, it's wielding this power through insight, through compassion, through love, through inspiration. That is real leadership, and that is why this psychology is so important, because it would give leaders the ability to really wield their power in a creative way instead of just a forceful way.
The world would be a better place. And so animus as a logos, really this transcendent part of the animus is, when you think about thought and the animus energy is thinking. So there's one of the Jungian authors talks about the women who are taken over by the animus and they're unconscious, and it becomes like this negative, mean, like a cranky old man, we would say, and the thought turns against us, and it's very, very harsh and critical. But there's a lot of movement and a lot of thought, but it's everyday thought, it's ego thought. What we want to do is we want to evolve it to the higher intellect, to be able to use thought in a more spiritual way, to understand our own nature and to have a higher levels of thinking.
Love that.
Mm.
So just as the anima ends up at the cosmic level, at the universal level, being the anima mundi, the soul of the world, the animus at the cosmic level ends up being logos, the power of logic, of mind, of will. In other words, what we do as human beings, right? If you notice what we do as a species on the planet, we transform everything into our own image.
Mm-hmm.
That's the logos at work. But without the balance, it becomes destructive, or we run the risk, as Jung says, of becoming a destructive force instead of a creative force.
And so it's like another term for the animus is the inner philosopher. It's the part of us that we can connect to for like kind of spiritual insight and inspiration, and that deep within us, versus going and getting our tarot cards read and hearing someone else tell us what it is. We can go in and become connected to our own inner philosopher. That's within us.
The power of meaning in leadership and action. Without meaning, in other words, without the strong why are we doing what we're doing? Then our work becomes meaningless, right? All this power that we have in technology and weapons and computers, it becomes meaningless to us, and we end up being enslaved by those things. Instead of those things helping us and inspiring us, they become a burden to us. The meaning has to lead the way. The meaning, the logos has to lead us in this inspired, creative way.
So more like a wisdom that we're tapping into.
That's right.
And the sense of purpose.
And that sense of purpose, the sense of why. What is the mission? What is the reason for creating these machines? And how is it going to serve our human needs, not the other way around?
And really, truly, we want to, like we said in the last episode and all of our episodes, we want to move away from that personal, limited concept of ourselves where there's just like a little shell of a persona out in the world, struggling through dark and the light of good and bad of our lives and the temporal existence that we have, that nothing ever stays the same, to going into the universal and really connecting with that lasting, constant space within ourselves.
Absolutely.
That's the idea of groundedness, is to feel that groundedness within ourselves. So we're not all out in the world spreading ourselves so thin, chasing mirages, basically these projections of our mind saying that person's going to love me, this is going to give me security, this is going to give me power, this is going to give me feeling and meaning. It comes from within first. You find it, and then you'll be able to express it.
That is an amazing thing, right? That we're always searching for these things out there, but it's really inside. You already have them, but it does require you to actualize them, to realize them, right? To integrate them, as Jung would say. Once you're integrated, then you can share them with others and have an impact on culture and do your work in a creative way.
And basically, integration means becoming conscious of these aspects within yourself. And there are many ways to do it. Of course, we always recommend getting a coach to help you, a Jungian coach. But really, it's working with your emotions. It's understanding and working with your dreams, understanding the symbols and the messages from your dreams. Doing active imagination, you can do that with the anima animus. And really understanding through action, being non-attached to results, and really looking at everything that shows up in your life as an opportunity to see your mind, versus thinking the world is separate from what's inside here, is seeing everything connected and looking at the world symbolically and sort of materially. And that's really where we can truly feel connected to everything and then ourselves.
That's right. Incredible ideas, of course, that Jung always presents us with. Challenging ideas, no doubt.
Yes, and we also, if you haven't already, those of you who are fans probably have this already, but we do have a link in the show notes for our free new ebook called Love and Power, Awakening the Feminine and Masculine Archetypes to Live Your True Purpose. So great little handbook for you with some exercises in it if you're interested in diving more into this work.
All right.
All right. We'll see you next week on Soul Sessions. If you haven't already, also, don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next week.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.